Erich Fromm's basic thesis is that modern-day people have been torn away from their prehistoric union with nature and also with one another, yet they have the power of reasoning, foresight, and imagination. So, this combination of lack of animal instincts and presence of rational thought makes humans the freaks of the universe. Self-awareness contributes to feelings of loneliness, isolation, and homelessness. To escape from these feelings, people strive to become reunited with nature, with their fellow human beings. So, Erich Fromm, he was trained in Freudian psychoanalysis and influenced by Karl Marx, Karen Harney, and other socially oriented theorists. Fromm developed a theory of personality that emphasizes the influence of sociobiological factors, history, economics, and class structures. So his humanistic psychoanalysis assumes that humanity's separation from the natural world has produced feelings of loneliness and isolation, a condition called basic anxiety. So to add more, he was also a social critic, psychotherapist, philosopher, biblical scholar, cultural anthropologist, and a psychobiographer. His humanistic psychoanalysis looks at people from a historical and cultural perspective rather than a strictly psychological one. It is less concerned with the individual and more concerned with those characteristics common to a culture. So let's move on to biography of Erich Fromm. So, like the views of all personality theories, Erich Fromm's view of human nature was shaped by childhood experiences. So, Fromm was born on March 23, 1900 in Frankfurt, Germany, the only child of middle-class Orthodox Jewish parents. So, his father, Naphtali Fromm, was the son of Rabbi and the grandson of two rabbis. So, his mother, Rosa Cross Fromm, was the niece of Ludwig Cross and well-known Talmudic scholar. As a young little boy, Erich studied the Old Testament with several prominent scholars, men who are regarded as humanists of extraordinary tolerance. So, Fromm's humanistic psychology can be traced the reading of these prophets with their vision of universal peace and harmony, and their teachings that there are ethical aspects to history, that nations can do right and wrong, and that history has its moral laws. Fromm's early childhood was less than ideal. He recalled that he had very neurotic parents and that he was probably a rather unbearably neurotic child. So he saw his father as being moody and his mother as prone to depression. So moreover, he grew up in two very distinct worlds. One, the traditional Orthodox Jewish world, and the other, the modern capitalist world. So this split existence created tensions that were nearly unendurable, but it generated in Fromm a lifelong tendency to see events from more than one perspective. Before we continue, there was an issue that led Erich Fromm's interest in Sigmund Freud and psychoanalysis. So the chapter of an infinite chronicled the shocking and puzzling suicide of an attractive artistic young woman who killed herself so she could be buried with her father, who had just died. So how was it possible that this young woman could prefer death to being alive, to the pleasures of life and painting? So, as Fromm read Freud, he began to learn about the Oedipus complex and to understand how such an event might be possible. Fromm, during adolescence, he was deeply moved by the writings of Freud and Karl Marx, but he was also stimulated by differences between the two. So, as he studied more, he began to question the validity of both systems. My main interest was clearly mapped out. I wanted to understand the laws that govern the life of the individual man and the laws of society. That was Erich Fromm said. So after the war, or the World War I, Fromm became a socialist, although at that time he refused to join the Socialist Party. Instead, he concentrated on his studies in psychology, philosophy, and sociology at the University of Heidelberg, where he was received his PhD in sociology at either age 22 or 25. So, Fromm was such a private person that his biographers do not agree on many facts of his life. So, Fromm still not confident that his training could answer such troubling questions as the suicide of the young woman or the insanity of war. So Fromm turned to psychoanalysis, believing that it promised answers to questions of human motivation that offered in other fields. So Fromm studied from 1925 until 1930. He studied psychoanalysis, first in Munich, then in Frankfurt, and finally at the Berlin Psychoanalytic Institute, where he was analyzed by Hans Sachs, a student of Freud. So, although Fromm never met Freud, most of his teachers during those years were strict adherents from Freudian theory. In 1926, the same year that he repudiated Orthodox Judaism, Fromm married Frieda Richman, his analyst who was more than 10 years his senior. So Richman would later obtain an international reputation for her work with schizophrenic patients. So Napt claimed that Richman was clearly a mother figure to Fromm, and that she even resembled his mother. Gail Hardstein added that Fromm seemed to have gone directly from being his mother's darling to a relationship with a number of older women who doted on him. So in any event, the marriage of Fromm and Fromm Richman was not a happy one. They separated in 1930 but were not divorced until much later, after both had emigrated to United States. In 1930, Fromm and several others founded the South German Institute for Psychoanalysis in Frankfurt, but with the Nazi threat becoming more intense, he soon moved to Switzerland, where he joined the newly founded International Institute of Social Research in Geneva. In 1933, he accepted an invitation to deliver a series of lectures at the Chicago Psychoanalytic Institute. So the following year, he immigrated to the United States and opened a private practice in New York City. In both Chicago and New York, Fromm renewed his acquaintance with Karen Horney, whom he had known casually at the Berlin Psychoanalytic Institute. Karen Horney was 15 years older than Fromm, eventually became a strong mother figure and mentor to him. So Fromm joined Horney's newly formed Association for the Advancement of Psychoanalysis, or AAP, in 1941. So although he and Horney have been lovers, by 1943 dissension within the association had made them rivals. Why? Because when students requested that Fromm, who did not hold an MD degree, teach a clinical course, the organization split over his qualification. So with this, Karen Horney and Erich Fromm have gone rivals. So with Horney siding against him, Fromm, along with Harry Stack, Sullivan, Clara Thompson, and several other members, quit the association and immediately made plans to begin an alternative organization. So in 1946, this group established the William Alanson White Institute of Psychiatry, Psychoanalysis, and Psychology, with Fromm chairing both the faculty and the training committee. In 1944, Fromm married Henry Gerland, a woman 2 years younger than Fromm and whose interest in religion and mystical thought furthered Fromm's own inclinations towards Zen Buddhism. In 1951, the couple moved to Mexico for a more favorable climate for Gerland, who suffered from rheumatoid arthritis. So Fromm joined the faculty of the National Autonomous in Mexico City, where he established a psychoanalytic department at the medical school. After his wife died in 1952, he continued to live in Mexico and commuted between his home in Cuernavaca and the United States, where he held various academic positions, including professor of psychology at Michigan State University from 1957 to 1961 and adjunct professor at New York University from 1962 to 1970. So while in Mexico, he met Annis Freeman, whom he married in 1953. So in 1968, Fromm suffered a serious heart attack and F was forced to slow down his busy schedule. In 1974, and still ill, he and his wife moved to Moralto, Switzerland, where he died on March 18, 1980, a few days short of his 80th birthday. So what kind of person was Erich Fromm? So apparently, different people saw him in quite different ways. But Hornstein listed a number of opposing traits that have been used to describe his personality. So according to his account, Fromm was authoritarian, gentle, pretentious, arrogant, pious, autocratic, shy, sincere, phony, and brilliant. Now, let's move on to Fromm's basic assumptions. Fromm's most basic assumption is that individual personality can be understood only in light of human history. So, the discussion of the human situation must precede that of personality, and psychology must be based on an anthropologist's philosophical concept of human existence. Fromm in 1947 believed that humans, unlike other animals, have been torn away from their prehistoric union with nature. They have no powerful instinct to adapt to a changing world. Instead, they have acquired the facility to reason, a condition Fromm called the human dilemma. So, what is the meaning of this? People experience this basic dilemma because they have become separate from nature and yet have the capacity to be aware of themselves as isolated beings. Fromm also said that the human ability to reason, therefore, is both blessing and a curse. On one hand, it permits people to survive, but on the other, it forces them to attempt to solve basic insoluble dichotomies. So Fromm referred to this as existential dichotomies or dichotomies because they are rooted in people's very existence. Humans cannot do away with these existential dichotomies. They can only react to these dichotomies relative to their culture and their individual personalities. There are three dichotomy that Fromm said. Number one is the most fundamental dichotomy is that between life and death. So it means self-awareness and reason tell us that we will die. But we try to negate this dichotomy by postulating life after death, an attempt that does not alter the fact that our lives end with death. The second existential dichotomy is that humans are capable of conceptualizing the goal of complete self-realization, but we also are aware that life is too short to reach that goal. So, some people try to solve this dichotomy by assuming that their own historical period is the crowning achievement of humanity, while others postulate a continuation of development after death. And the last one is that people are ultimately alone, yet we cannot tolerate isolation. So, they are aware of themselves as separate individuals, and at the same time, they believe that their happiness depends on uniting with their fellow human beings. Although people cannot completely solve the problem of aloneness versus union, they must make an attempt or run the risk of insanity. Let's move forward to our next topic, the human needs by Erich Fromm. Human needs as animals, humans are motivated by psychological needs such as hunger, sex, and safety. But they can never resolve their human dilemma by satisfying these animals' needs. Only the distinctive human's needs can move people toward a reunion with the natural world. These existential needs have emerged during the evolution of human culture, growing out of their attempts to find an answer to their existence and to avoid becoming insane. Indeed, from contended that one important difference between mentally healthy individuals and neurotic or insane ones is that healthy people find answer to their existence, answers that more completely correspond to their total human needs. Erich Fromm outlined the 5 fundamental human needs that go beyond basic survival. These needs reflect our psychological and existential struggles as conscious beings. He believed that fulfilling these needs in a healthy way leads to personal growth, while neglecting them can cause psychological distress. So these five fundamental things is the relatedness, transcendence, rootedness, a sense of identity, and a frame of orientation. Number one is the relatedness. The first human or existential need is relatedness, the drive for union in another person or other people. From postulated three basic ways in which a person may relate to the world: the submission, power, and love. A person can submit to another, to a group, or to an institution in order to become one with the world. In this way, he transcends the separateness of his individual existence by becoming part of somebody or something bigger than himself, and experiences identity in connection with the power to which he has submitted. Whereas submissive people search for a relationship with domineering people, power seekers welcome submissive partners. So, when a submissive person and a domineering person find each other, they frequently establish a symbiotic relationship, one that is satisfying to both partners. So, although such symbiosis may be gratifying, it blocks growth toward integrity and psychological health. The two partners live on each other from each other, satisfying their craving for closeness, yet suffering from a lack of inner strength and self-reliance, which would require a freedom and independence. People in symbiotic relationships are drawn to one another not by love but by desperate need for relatedness, a need that can never be completely satisfied by such a partnership. Underlying the union are unconscious feelings of hostility. So, meaning people in symbiotic relationship blame their partners for not being able to completely satisfy their needs. They find themselves seeking additional submission or power, and as a result, they become more and more dependent on their partners and less of an individual. Fromm believed that love is the only route by which a person can become united with the world and at the same time achieve individuality and integrity. So he defined love as a union with somebody or something outside oneself under the condition of retaining the separateness and integrity of one's own self. So love involves sharing and communion with another, yet it allows a person the freedom to be unique and separate. It enables a person to satisfy the need for relatedness without surrendering integrity and independence. So in love, two people become one yet remain two. So in The Art of Loving, from in 1956, identify care, responsibility, respect, and knowledge as four basic elements common to all forms of genuine love. Someone who loves another person must care for that person and be willing to take care of him or her. So, love also means responsibility, that is, a willingness and ability to respond. A person who loves others responds to their physical and psychological needs, respect them for who they are, and avoids the temptation of trying to change them. The second one is the transcendence. So, like other animals, humans are thrown into the world without their consent or will and then removed from it, again without their consent or will. But unlike other animals, human beings are driven by the need for transcendence, defined as the urge to rise above and a passive and a accidental existence and into the realm of purposefulness and freedom. So from in 1981, just a relatedness can be pursued through either productive or non-productive methods. Transcendence that can be sought through either positive or negative approaches. People can transcend their passive nature by either creating life or destroying it. Although other animals can create life through reproduction, only humans are aware of themselves as creators. Also, humans can be created in other ways. They can create art, religions, ideas, laws, material, productive, and love. So to create means to be active and to care about that which we create, but we can also transcend life by destroying it and thus rising above our slain victims. In the Anatomy of Human Destructiveness from in 1973, argued that humans are the only species to use malignant aggression, that is, to kill or for reasons other than survival. Although malignant aggression is a dominant and powerful passion in some individuals and cultures, it is not common to all humans. It apparently was unknown to many prehistoric societies as well as some contemporary primitive societies. The third one is the rootedness. So a third existential need is for rootedness, or the need to establish roots or to feel at home again in the world. When humans evolve as a separate species, they lost their home in the natural world. At the same time, their capacity for thought enabled them to realize that they were without roots. The consequent feelings of isolation and helplessness became unbearable. So, rootedness can be sought in either productive or non-productive strategies. So, with the productive strategy, people are weaned from the orbit of their mother and become fully born. That is, they actively and creatively relate to the world and become whole or integrated. So, this new tie to the natural world confers security and reestablishes a sense of belongingness and rootedness. However, people may also seek rootedness through the non-productive strategy of fixation, a tenacious reluctance to move beyond the productive security provided by one's mother. So, people who strive for rootedness through fixation are afraid to take the next step of birth, to be weaned from the mother's breast. So, they have a deep craving to be mothered, nursed, protected by a motherly figure, and they are the externally dependent ones who are frightened and insecure when motherly protection is withdrawn. So, rootedness can also be seen phylogenetically in the evolution of human species. Fromm agreed with the Freud that incestuous desires are universal, but he disagreed with Freud's belief that they are essentially sexual. So, according to Fromm, incestuous feelings are based in the deep-seated craving to remain in or to return to the all-enveloping womb, or a or to be all-nourishing breast. So Fromm was influenced by Johann Jacob Bachofen's ideas on early material societies. So unlike Freud, who believed that early societies were patriarchal, Bachofen held that the mother was the central figure in these ancient social groups. So it was she who provided roots for her children and motivated them either to develop their individuality and reason or to become fixated and incapable of psychological growth. So, according to Fromm, his strong preference for Bachofen's mother-centered theory of the Oedipal situation over Freud's father-centered conception is consistent with his preference for older women. Fromm's first wife, Frida Fromm Richman, was more than 10 years older than Fromm, and his longtime lover, Karen Harney, was 15 years his senior. So Fromm's conception of the Oedipus complex as a desire to return to the mother's womb or breast or to a person with a mothering function should be viewed in light of his attraction to older women. The fourth one is the sense of identity, or the capacity to be aware of ourselves as a separate entity. Because we have been torn away from nature, we need to form a concept of ourselves to able to say, I am the subject of my actions. So Fromm in 1981 believed that primitive people identified more closely with their clan and did not see themselves as individuals existing apart from their group. So even during medieval times, people were identified largely by their social role in the feudal uh, hierarchy. In agreement with Marx, Fromm believed that the rise of capitalism has given people more economic and political freedom. However, this freedom has given only a minority of people a true sense of I. The identity of most people still resides in their attachment to others or to institutions such as nation, religion, occupation, or social group. So, without a sense of identity, people could not retain their sanity, and this threat provides a powerful motivation to do almost anything to acquire a sense of identity. Neurotics try to attach themselves to powerful people or to social or political institutions. Healthy people, however, have less need to conform to the herd, less need to give up their sense of self. So they do not have to surrender their freedom and individuality in order to fit into society because they possess an authentic sense of identity. The final human need is for a frame of orientation. Being split off from nature, human needs a roadmap, a frame of orientation to make their way through the world. So without such a map, humans would be confused and unable to act purposefully and consistently. So a frame of orientation enables people to organize the various stimuli that imping on them. So people who possess a solid frame of orientation can make a sense of these events and phenomena. But those who lack a reliable frame of orientation will never the less strive to put these events into some sort of framework in order to make a sense of them. For example, an American with shaky frame of orientation and a poor understanding of history may attempt to understand the events of like September 11, 2001 by blaming them on evil or bad people. Every person has a philosophy, a consistent way of looking at things. So many people take or granted this philosophy or frame of reference so that anything at odds with their view is judged as crazy or unreasonable. Anything consistent with it it's seen simply as common sense. People will do nearly anything to acquire, retain a frame of orientation, even to do extreme of following irrational or bizarre philosophy such as those espoused by fanatical political and religious leaders. A roadmap without a goal or destination is worthless. Humans have the mental capacity to imagine many alternative paths to follow, to keep from going insane. However, they need a final goal or object of devotion. According to Fromm in 1976, this goal or object of devotion focuses on people's energies in a single direction, enables us to transcend our isolated existence and confers meaning to our lives. This is the summary of human needs, and this is the last part of my report. So I hope you learned something, and thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Mohamad Hamdi. In this video presentations, we're going to talk about the burden of freedom and the character orientations by Erich Fromm. Erich Fromm explores the paradox of human freedom, explaining that while humans are part of nature, their unique ability to reason makes them feel isolated and disconnected. He described humans as the freaks of the universe because, unlike animals, They possess self-awareness, imaginations, and rational thoughts. Sinabi ni Erich Fromm na ang mga tao is the freaks of the universe. It is because kung titignan natin or ikukumpara natin yung ating sarili into other species, like for example sa animals, is nakadepende lang sa kanilang instinct yung kanilang mga galaw. Tayong mga tao is meron tayong self-awareness, we know what happened in the world around us, and meron tayong sapat na pag-iisip para masabing mali or tama yung ginagawa natin. This quality allows human to shape their own lives, but they also create loneliness and anxiety. Nang dahil sa self-awareness natin, nang dahil sa mga reasons or pag-iisip natin, is ito rin yung nagiging dahilan kung bakit tayo nakakaramdam ng kalungkutan or anxiety, mga depressions, and what so on. The burden of freedom. Yung akala natin na di porket meron na tayong freedom is malaya na natin nagagawa yung mga bagay na gusto natin. Hindi natin alam na the way we touch the soul of being free is the more na nafe-feel natin na isolate tayo from our nature. Like, para tayong nawala sa pagkakagapos na hindi natin alam kung sino yung magpapakain sa atin. A lack of security. Kung hindi ka pa magsatrabaho is wala kang makakain. Like, kung walang magbibigay sa'yo ng allowance or problema mo kung sino yung magbibigay sa'yo ng pera para makapunta ka ng school. So, sa mga reasons na yan kung bakit nakakaramdam ng mga basics anxiety yung mga tao. As a societies evolve, people gain economic and political freedom, but these lead to greater feelings of isolation. So, both political and economics is meron na tayong freedom or kalayaan is the more naman na nafe-feel ng tao na lonely sila o naka-isolate sila from their nature. Like for example, in the Middle Age, people had fixed social rules that provide security and certainty. During the Middle Age, yung mga tao is although limitado lang yung kanilang galaw, kumbaga is fixed na yung kanilang rules sa society, is less naman yung kanilang iniisip na problems, like hindi na nila problema kung sinong magpapakain sa kanila kasi nga is meron na silang mga trabaho sa lipunan at meron na silang security from their governments. On a personal level, as children grow in gaining independent, they express the burden of freedom, losing the security of dependence. So, yung mga batang nag-grow is nagiging dependent na sila sa kanilang magulang, like nung dati na umiiyak sila sa tuwing iniiwan sila ng kanilang mga magulang, ngayong nag-grow na sila is nagiging dependent na sila sa kanilang mga magulang at naglilis na rin yung security na natatanggap nila sa kanilang mga magulang. Marunong na silang pumili sa kung ano yung susuotin nila at alam na nila kung paano makipagkaibigan o pumili ng mga kaibigan. So sa mga reasons na yan is nararamdaman na ng bata yung tinatawag na burden of freedom. This anxiety forces people to seek way to escape from freedom. So, si Erich Fromm, meron siyang mechanisms of escape para matakasan yung burden of freedom. So, meron siyang tinatawag na authoritarianisms, destructiveness, and conformity. Authoritarianisms, giving up independence by either submitting to or dominating others. So sa authoritarianisms, is sila yung ito yung mechanism na kung saan is gini-give up nila yung kanilang pagiging independent to people na mas superior sa kanila. Kumbaga, sinusuko nila yung kanilang mga sarili sa mas powerful sa kanila. And sa authoritarianism, it has the two varieties, which is masochisms and sadisms. So masochisms, seeking security by submitting to authorities. Sila yung nagsisik ng security to other people through submitting their authority. So, nagdi-disguise sila as a lover o loyalty. Sadism is gaining power by controlling or harming others. Sila yung mga taong nagmamanipulate or minamanipulate nila yung ibang tao to gain a power. According kay Fromm, identify three forms of sadistic behaviors. The first one is making other dependent. They control the people, the weaker than them, o kinokontrol nila yung mas mahina sa kanila para makagain sila ng power or masabing sila yung makapangyarihan. Exploiting others, using people for personal gain. So, ina-exploit nila yung ibang tao para sa sarili nilang interest, sarili nilang kapakanan. Kumbaga, in a philosophy, it is egoism. Ginagawa nila yung isang bagay or ina-exploit nila yung ibang tao, minamanipulate nila yung ibang tao para sa sarili nilang interest. Inflicting suffering. Ito naman yung natutuwa sila every time na nakakakita sila ng pareho nilang tao na nahihirapan o nagsasuffer both physical or emotions. Number 2, sa mechanisms of escape is destructiveness, attempting to regain power by eliminating threats through violence or destruction. So, unlike kay sadisms and masochisms na nagsisik sila ng ibang tao, itong si destructiveness does not require continuous relationship. Kumbaga, is mas pinipili nilang manakit ng ibang tao o sila yung mga taong kayang pumatay ng iba. Conformity. Losing individuality by blending into society. People behave like automatons following trends instead of expressing their true selves. So, sila yung mga taong nakadepende sa kung ano yung trend sa lipunan. Kumbaga, they act like a robot. Sumusunod sila sa kung ano yung kagustuhan ng ibang tao sa kanila or kung ano yung trends is yun, ganun yung kanilang behavior. And lastly, is itong si positive freedom. So, sa positive freedom, it is not also the mechanism of escape. Kumbaga, ito na yung manifestations or ito na yung sagot para makatakas tayo sa burden of freedom. The positive freedom. The path to self-realizations. So, you need to realize kung ano yung mga mali mo and magbago ka sa kung ano yung nakasanayan mong ugali. Erich Fromm argues that freedom does not have to lead to isolations. Instead, individual can achieve positive freedom through self-expressions, love, and work. So, sa self-expressions, is dapat maging productive tayo or mas nagiging positive freedom. So, the positive freedom is not also the kind of mechanism of escape. Kumbaga, siya na yung manifestations or sagot sa kung paano natin ma-escape yung burden of freedom. The path to self-realization. So, kailangan mong ng self-realization, hindi mo naman kailangan ng confirm, ng maging destructive or exploiting, maging sadistic. Ang kailangan mo lang is self-expressions or the genuine love, how to love your work, or maging productive ka sa kung ano yung ginagawa mo. Children's friends and artists naturally exhibiting spontaneous activity, acting according to their true natures rather than societal expectations. So, yung mga artists is hindi naman yan sila nagdo-drawing sa base sa kung ano yung gusto ng iba sa kanila. Kumbaga, is kung ano yung naisip nila, is yun yung ini-express nila through painting. Yung mga bata is matitigas talaga ang ulo nila or sabihin na natin matigas talaga yung ulo ng mga bata kahit anong suway mo sa kanila is ganun pala yung behavior na it is because is nakabase sa kung ano yung totoong ugali nila yung kanilang actions. Form identify. Now let us proceed to the character orientations. Character orientations reflects the relative permanent way of relating to the people instincts. According to Erich Fromm's defined personality as the totality of inherited and acquired psychic qualities that makes individual unique. The most important part of personality is character, which serves as a substitute for instinct. Instead of acting of instinct, people act according to their character, allowing them to behave efficiently and consistently. People interact with the world into two ways, the assimilations and socialization. Sa assimilations is this how we use the things around us, and sa socializations is kung paano tayo makipag-socialize sa ibang tao. These interactions can be either productive or the non-productive. Non-productive orientations. Non-productive orientations do not necessarily mean failure, but they do not help individual achieve positive freedom and self-realizations. Kumbaga is more on neurotic trend itong si non-productive orientations. Kumbaga is lumalayo siya para linalayo niya tayo sa ating positive freedom. So sa non-productive orientation, it has the four varieties, which is the receptive, exploitative, character, hoarding, and the marketing. In non-productive orientation, it has four variety of it, which is receptive character, exploitative, hoarding, and marketing. So receptive character believe that all good things came from the outside themselves, depend on the other for love, knowledge, and material things. Sa receptive is naniniwala sila na lahat ng mga bagay na mabuti ay nasa labas ng kanilang sarili. So, dumedepende sila sa ibang tao. Kumbaga is naghihintay lang sila na mabigyan ng tulong. Pero, hindi sila gumagawa ng paraan para sa kanilang sarili. Ang negative traits nito is passive, submissive, lack of self-confidence. Sa positive traits naman is loyal, trust, and accepting. Sa exploitative character, take what they want through force or manipulations, steal idea, relationship, or positions rather than creating their own. So sa exploitative is pareho sila kay receptive na naniniwala na lahat ng mga mabuti ay nasa labas ng kanilang sarili. Pero ang pinagkaiba nila is itong si exploitative is nag-exploit niya or kinukuha niya yung mga bagay na gusto niya by force or manipulations, forcefully or manipulating. Minamanipulate nila yung ibang tao, they steal the idea or relationship, even the relationship, or mang-agaw ng asawa para lang masabi na sila yung magaling. Ang pinakahalimbawa nito is mahilig manggamit ng iba para sa sarili nilang kapakanan. The egoism's negative traits nito is egocentric, arrogant, deceitful. The positive trait, confident, charm, and bold. Hoarding. Focus on keeping what they already have, money, emotions, or idea. Resistance to change and live in the past. So sa hoarding, unlike kay receptive and exploitative, itong si hoarding is naniniwala na lahat ng mga mabuting bagay ay nasa kanila. So instead na mag-share sila, is kinikip nila yung mga bagay-bagay. Like for example, kahit sobra-sobra yung pera nila is hindi sila nagbibigay or hindi sila nag-share sa ibang tao. Ang mga negative traits nito is rigid, compulsive, and possessive. Positive traits naman is orderly, punctual, and discipline. So marketing, character, see themselves as a commodities, constantly adjusting to be valued. Lack stability, identify, adapting to whatever is currently is demand. Kumbaga sa marketing is minamarket nila yung kanilang sarili or ito yung kind of character na dumidepende sa kung ano yung gusto ng iba or kung ano yung demand. Kumbaga is kung ginagawa nila yung isang bagay kahit na hindi na naangkop sa totoo nilang ugali. Ang mga negative traits nito is endless Since you guys already know about the first character orientations, which is the non-productive orientations, I will now present to you the second character orientations, which is the productive orientations. Productive orientations, in layman's terms, this is healthier's way of relating to other. It has three dimensions: working, loving, and reasoning. Because productive people work toward positive freedoms and a continuing realizations of their potentials. They are the healthiest of all character types. Only through productive activity can people solve basic human dilemma, that is to unite with the world and with the other while retaining uniqueness and individuality. The solutions can be accomplished only through productive work, love, and thoughts. Now, let's dive deeper to these three dimensions. First is work, or work creatively to express oneself. Healthy people value work not to exploit the other, but as a means of creative self-expressions. Hindi sila nagtatrabaho or hindi sila nagsisikap na magtrabaho para pagsamantalahan yung ibang tao. Nagtatrabaho sila para makita yung creative side nila, at the same time is masusustentuhan nila yung mga personal necessities nila. Just like mga customer service representative, they need to be creative in answering any customer inquiry. Hindi sila nakarelay sa script para hindi sila maging sound robotic sa mga kausap nila. It was like, if you love your work, you can express yourself creatively and you can perform well. The next one is the productive love. Productive love is characterized by the four qualities of love: care, responsibility, respect, and knowledge. Love is not simply feelings, but an active act that required conscious effort, characterized by four core elements: care, responsibility, respect, and knowledge. According to Erich Fromm, essentially, love is about actively nurturing and supporting the growth of the person you love, while respecting their individuality and getting to know them deeply. In addition to these four characteristics, healthy people possess biophilia, that is a passionate love of life and all that is alive. Biophilic people, they are concerned with the growth and development of themselves as well as the other. Biophilic individual want to influence people through love and reasons. Erich Fromm believed that love of others and self-love are inseparable, but that self-love must come first. All people have the capacity for productive love, but most do not achieve it because they cannot first love themselves. In short, bago mo mahalin yung iba, is matutunan mo munang mahalin yung sarili mo. According sa books ni Erich Fromm na The Art of Loving, there are 5 types of love: brotherly love, motherly love, erotic love, self-love, and love of God. Finally, the reasoning of productive thinking, itong last productive orientations, hindi ito mahihiwalay sa work in love. Pwede nilang makita yung sarili nila sa ibang tao or entity in a good way. Healthy people see other as they are and not as they would wish them to be. Similarly, they know themselves for who they are and have no need for self-delusions or fake themselves. Erich Fromm believed that healthy people rely on some combination of all 5 character orientations. Their survival as healthy individual depends on their ability to receive things from other people, to take things when appropriate, to preserve things, to exchange things, and to work, love, and things productively. In conclusions, Erich Fromm theory explaining how freedom creates anxiety, leading people to escape into authority, distractions, or conformity. But true happiness comes from embracing positive freedom, expressing individuality, forming forming genuine connections, and engaging in meaningful work. Instead of escaping freedom, people must use it to grow, love, and create.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to the Erich Fromm's world. This is Noralyn Silongan. And I will be discussing about some topics about Fromm's Humanistic Psychoanalysis. And those are personality disorders, psychotherapy, Fromm's method of investigation, critique of Fromm, and concept of humanity. Before that, naniniwala si Fromm na ang mga healthy people ay nakarely sa isang combination ng lahat ng limang character orientation. Their survival as healthy individuals depends on their ability to receive things from other people, to take things when appropriate, to preserve things, to exchange things, and to work, love, and think productively. That is based on the previous report. Kung hindi nila makakamit ang mga nabanggit na character orientation, may possibility na unhealthy sila or magkakaroon sila ng personality disorder. Now, let's talk about personality disorder. Have you watched the movie Glass? 2019 movie. Kapag hindi pa, I suggest panoorin niyo pag may free time kayo. This is a psychological thriller that features characters with personality disorders. In Glass, James McAvoy reprises his role as Kevin Wendell Crumb as a man with 24 distinct personalities, including a dangerous one known as the Beast. He is joined by Bruce Willis here as David Dunn, a man with a superhuman strength, and Samuel Jackson as Elijah Price or Mr. Glass, a highly intelligent but physically fragile mastermind. So, the movie explores the blurred lines between mental illness and human potential. This is a fiction movie, but if you could only see the character they portray on that, masasabi natin na yun yung mga example ng personality disorders. Si Kevin Wendell Crumb mag-isa sa buhay kaya nag-create ng maraming personality sa utak niya. Si Elijah Price naman parang feeling niya hindi siya mahal ng kanyang ina in a way na gusto siyang i-abandon. Personality disorder as defined by Erich Fromm in the 10th edition book Theories of Personalities by Feist and his colleagues. It means these are people that are incapable of love and have failed to establish union with others. So, kung yung mga healthy people kayang mag-work, makaramdam ng love, at nakakapag-isip ng maayos, yung mga unhealthy people naman, opposite nila. Kasi bigo na sila sa lahat in terms of love and bigo pa sila sa pakikisalamuha sa iba. So, according to Fromm's, there are 3 severe personalities disorder. First is necrophilia. Second is malignant narcissism. And the last one is incestuous symbiosis. Personality disorder are marked by problems in these 3 areas, especially failure to love productively. So, let's dive deeper on these 3 severe personality disorder. So, what comes into your mind when I say necrophilia? Well, based on the reference that we had, necrophilia denotes any attraction to death. It means love of death and usually refers to a sexual perversion. Alam niyo ba na may mga taong, sorry for my term here, nakikipag-sex sa patay? Ito na sila. Necrophilia ang tawag sa kanila pero kay Erich Fromm, inisa na niya yung term na attraction to death. Pero hindi lang yan. So, I have listed some necrophilic personalities here, and these are hate humanity. They are racist, warmongers, and bullies. They love bloodshed, destruction, terror, and torture. They delight in destroying life. They are strong advocates of law and order. Love to talk about sickness, death, and burials. They are fascinated by dirt, decay, corpses, and feces. They prefer night to day. And they love to operate in darkness and shadow. Necrophilious people do not simply behave in a destructive manner. Rather, their destructive behavior is a reflection of their basic character. Lahat naman tayo maybe isa dyan personalities na natin, hindi lang natin napapansin. But yung mga necrophilious person, they revolves around death, destruction, disease, and decay. Next is malignant narcissisms. Ito yung GGSS, gandang-ganda or gwapong-gwapo sa sarili kapag nananalamin. Kita niyo naman sa picture, meron pang gandang-ganda sa katawan. Okay lang yan, mild pa naman yan na sign ng pagiging narcissism. That is, healthy people manifest a benign form of narcissism that is an interest in their own body. Pero wag naman siguro yung ganito, over na yan. On the other hand, yung mga narcissist, meron pang time na yung mahalaga sa ibang tao parang sa kanila, hindi nila pinapahalagahan. Like, sa'yo na part, may sentimental value, yung gamit mo, tapos sa kanila parang walang halaga lang. In addition to that, ito, masyado silang busy sa sarili nila at sa health nila na parang masyado silang obsessed. Minsan, humahantong na ito sa hypochondriasis, which is a preoccupation with guilt about previous transgression. So, in modern psychiatry, this is called illness anxiety disorder, which is a mental health condition where a person has an excessive and persistent fear of having a serious illness despite having a little or no medical evidence to support it. Like, may nakita lang na foreign things na nakalagay sa katawan nila. Grabe na yung alala nila na feeling malala na yung sakit kahit charcoal lang pala yung nakalagay. Minsan, nagre-resulta din ito ng pagkakaroon nila ng depression. Yung isang pakiramdam ng parang worthless or wala na silang halaga. So, dito, naniniwala si Fromm na ang bawat isa sa mga ito ay maaaring sintomas ng malalim na pinagbabatayan ng narcissism. Lastly is incestuous symbiosis, an extreme dependence on the mother or mother surrogate. Incestuous symbiosis is an exaggerated form of the more common and more benign mother fixation. Ito na si anak na masyadong nakaasa kay nanay. Ma, anong ulam? Ma, saan nakalagay yung damit ko? Parang hindi mabubuhay kung wala yung nanay. Ang ending, naghahanap ng GF or girlfriend or asawa na mother figure. Katulad na lang ni Erich Fromm itself. Well, lalayo pa ba tayo? Kung mapapansin niyo sa biography niya na report ni Jamer, yung mga naging asawa niya mas matanda sa kanya at may pagka-mother figure. Yung inaalagaan siya, minamahal at sinusuportahan siya sa lahat ng bagay. Ang mga lalaking may mother fixation katulad ni Erich Fromm ay nangangailangan ng babaeng mag-aalaga sa kanila, magmamahal sa kanila at yung nag-a-admire sa kanila. Medyo nababalsa at nanlulumayan sila kapag hindi natutupad ang kanilang mga pangangailangan. So, ano man boys, may sintomas na ba? So, kidding aside, huwag kayong mag-alala boys kung meron man sa inyo dito. Normal pa naman kayo as long as hindi ito nakakasagabal sa everyday life niyo. So, para sa kaalaman ng lahat, ang incestuous symbiosis ay nagmula sa infancy ng baby sila. bilang isang natural na attachment nila sa kanilang ina. So, people living in incestuous symbiotic relationships feel extremely anxious and frightened. Yan, nababalisan at natatakot if that relationship is threatened. So, they believe that they cannot live without their mother's substitute. And mind you guys, hindi lang ito sa mother pwedeng naka-attach. It can be a family member, whether father or aunt or a brother or sister. It can be in a business, like hindi mabubuhay kung hindi makainom ng coke. Or pwede rin yung masyado silang naka-attach sa company nila, or shall I say, yung busy masyado sa work na tao na wala nang time to get a life or enjoy their life. Masyadong passionate or dedicated sa work. And also, sa church or sa cult. I don't know if you're familiar with the news yung sa Surigao na inaangkin nila na sila yung government ng Pilipinas na they have the right to do what they want to do to the point na pwede nila isarada yung business establishment na hindi nagbabayad ng tax sa kanila. Yung tagkasunod nila, yun yung mga example ng incestuous symbiosis. Yung akala nila tama yung prinsipyo na pinaglalaban ng leader nila, kaya sunod lang sila ng sunod at parang hindi na sila nakakapag-isip ng maayos at parang siguro way of thinking nila is pag nag-success itong plano nila na i-invade yung mga lugar sa Pilipinas, may secured position na sila sa cult nila. Parang nakaasa lang sila sa leader nila na walang kasiguraduhan. Parang ganun. And also, even in a nation, like for example si Hitler, masyado siyang patriotic sa Germany na halos gustong ubusin yung lahi ng Jews. So, kung ang tatlong personality disorder na ito ay meron ka lahat, like may sintomas ka ng necrophilia, narcissism, or malignant narcissism, and incestuous symbiosis, so you form what Fromm called the syndrome of decay. Syndrome of decay means a slow breakdown or decline in something over time, so it can happen to a person's body, mind, or even a whole society. This can be caused by disease, stress, neglect, or other problems which is unhealthy. So, kung wala ka naman sintomas niyan, ikaw ay napapabilang sa opposite side niyan, which is yung syndrome of growth. Syndrome of growth here, which is made up of the opposite qualities, which is the biophilia, love, and positive freedom. And this is considered healthy people. So, as shown in this figure, both the syndrome of decay and the syndrome of growth are extreme forms of development. Most people have average psychological health, yung parang balance lang. So, three pathological orientations, necrophilia, narcissism, and incestuous symbiosis, converge to form the syndrome of decay, whereas three healthy orientations, biophilia, love of others, and positive freedom, converge in the syndrome of growth. So most people have average development and are motivated by neither the syndrome of decay nor the syndrome of growth. Next is psychotherapy. Fromm was trained as an orthodox Freudian analyst but became bored with standard analytic techniques. So he then evolved his own system of therapy, which he called Humanistic Psychoanalysis. Erich Fromm's psychotherapy was a humanistic approach that aimed to meet people's basic needs. Compared with Freud, Erich Fromm was much more concerned with the interpersonal aspect of a therapeutic encounter. He believed that the aim of therapy is for patients to come to know themselves, because without knowledge of ourselves, we cannot know any other person or thing. So, Fromm believed that patients come to therapy seeking satisfaction of their basic human needs. And that is relatedness, transcendence, rootedness, a sense of identity, and a frame of orientation. Therefore, therapy should be built on a personal relationship between therapist and patient, because accurate communication is essential to therapeutic growth. Kaya napaka-importante ng communication dito. You have to build rapport with your patient to build connection. So the therapist must relate as one human being to another with utter concentration and utter sincerity. In this spirit of relatedness, the patient will once again feel at one with one another person. So the important thing here is that two real human beings are involved with one another as part of his attempt to achieve shared communication. So here, Fromm asked patients to reveal their dreams because he believed that dreams as well as fairy tales and myths are expressed in symbolic language, the universal language humans have developed. Fromm also believed that therapists should not try to be too scientific in understanding a patient. Yung tipong hindi sila nakaasa lang sa science or sa book, hindi naman lahat kompleto nalagay sa book kasi minsan, pag napansin ng writer na kulang, ina-upgrade niya ito at another edition na naman yung napapublish. Perhaps the idea here is, sige ikaw na yung matalino, nabasa mo na lahat ng science book na kailangan basahin, pero ang kailangan ng patient mo is actual conversation with diplomacy na hindi mo madalas makita sa book. Only with the attitude of relatedness can another person be truly understood. So here, the therapist should not view the patient as an illness or a thing, but a person with the same human needs that all people possess. So the therapist accomplishes this through shared communication in which the therapist is simply a human being rather than a scientist. So here, the goal from psychotherapy is to establish a union with patients so that they can become united with the world. So, in Fromm's method of investigation, Fromm gathered data on human personality from many sources, including psychotherapy, cultural anthropology, and psychohistory. Here, Erich Fromm looked briefly at his anthropological study of life in a Mexican village and his psychobiographical analysis of Adolf Hitler. So next is social character in a Mexican village. Beginning in the late 1950s and extending into the mid-1960s, Fromm and with his group studied social character in Chicancuac, a Mexican village about 50 miles south of Mexico City. And he actually published a book here, which is a social character in a Mexican village. And the team interviewed every adult and half the children in this isolated farming village of 162 households and about 800 inhabitants. The people of the village were mostly farmers, earning a living from small plots of fertile land. So, curiosity brings them to the questions, could one expect to find Fromm's character orientations in such society? So, the answer here is yes. Nakita naman nila dyan yung mga receptive, hoarding, and exploitative, which is unproductive type of character orientations. So, after living among the villagers and gaining their acceptance, the research team employed an assortment of techniques designed to answer these and other questions. So, included among the research tool were extensive interviews, dream reports, detailed questionnaires, and two projective techniques, which is the Rorschach inkblot test and the thematic apperception test. So here, the Rorschach inkblot test here is a psychological assessment in which a person describes what they see in a series of ambiguous inkblot images like this one. So it was developed by Hermann Rorschach in 1921 and it is used to analyze personality traits, emotional functioning, and potential mental disorders. Psychologists evaluate persons' responses based on factors like perception, interpretation, and reaction to the inkblots. So in the thematic apperception test naman or TAT, this is a psychological assessment where a person is shown a series of ambiguous pictures like here in the presentation and asked to create a story about each one. So it was actually developed by Henry Murray and Christiana Morgan in the 1930s, and it is used to assess personality, emotions, and underlying motivations. So the test is commonly used in clinical psychology, therapy, and research. So in general, Fromm and McAvee reported a remarkable similarity between character orientations in this Mexican village. And this anthropological study, of course, cannot be considered a confirmation of Fromm's theory. As one of the study's principal investigators, Fromm may simply have found what he had expected to find. Now let's move on to psychohistorical study of Hitler. Following Freud, Fromm examined historical documents in order to sketch a psychological portrait of a prominent person, and this technique he called psychohistory or psychobiography. So the subject of Fromm's most complete psychobiographical study was Freud, but Fromm also wrote at length on the life of Hitler, which you can find more details in his published book, The Anatomy of Human Destructiveness. Fromm regarded Hitler as the world's most conspicuous example of a person with a syndrome of decay. Because here he possessed a combination of necrophilia, malignant narcissisms, and incestuous symbiosis. Kaya kung mapapansin niyo sa lahat ng example natin, puro nakatutok lahat kay Hitler, because Adolf Hitler here displayed all three pathological disorders. He was attracted to death and destruction, narrowly focused on self-interest, and driven by an incestuous devotion to the Germanic race, and being fanatically dedicated to preventing its blood from being polluted by Jews and other non-Aryans. So, ang necrophilia, hindi lang tumutukoy sa pag-uugali. Ito ay sumasaklaw din sa buong pagkatao ng isang tao. At gayon din kay Hitler or Adolf Hitler. Pagkatapos niyang maluklok sa kapangyarihan, hiniling niya na hindi lamang sumuko ang kanyang mga kaaway, kundi pati na rin lipulin or ubusin yung lahi nila. So, ang pagiging necrophilia niya, nakita yan sa kanyang kahibangan para sa pagsira ng mga buildings and cities. Tapos inutos pa niya na patay ng mga may sira na tao. Tapos buti hindi siya sinama dito na patay na. At kapag na-board siya, pinapatay niya yung mga milyong-milyong Jews. At buti hindi nasali dito si Erich Fromm. So, ang isa pang katangian na ipinapakita ni Hitler ay ang malignant narcissism. Siya ay interesado lamang sa kanyang sarili, sa kanyang mga plano at sa kanyang ideology. Wala siyang interest na or shall I say, wala siyang interest sa sino man maliban kung ang taong yun ay naglilingkod sa kanya. And ang kanyang mga relasyon sa mga babae ay siguro kulang sa pagmamahal at lambing, parang for pleasure lang. And all these characteristics Fromm contended did not make Hitler psychotic. They did, however, it made him a sick and dangerous man. Now let's proceed to the critique of Fromm. So, nung 1950s, kung nabubuhay tayo sa era na ito, pag hindi mo daw nabasa yung book niya na Escape from Freedom, hindi ka makakonsider na edukado. According to the critics of Erich Fromm, like Theodore Adorno, Herbert Marcuse, and Noam Chomsky, ito yung nakita nila or na-criticize nila sa kanya. First is falsifiable or verifiable. Fromm's theory is too philosophical to be either falsifiable or verifiable. Nearly any empirical findings generated by Fromm's theory, if they existed, could be explained by alternative theories. Next is, it did not generate much research. So some critics argue that Fromm's theories are more philosophical than scientific, with limited empirical evidence to substantiate his claim. Next is organized knowledge. Since it covers much about human personality, that's why they say this is organized knowledge. And next is guide to action. So the chief value of Fromm's writing is to stimulate readers to think productively. Unfortunately, however, neither the researcher nor the therapist receives much practical information from Fromm's essays. Next is internally consistent. In the sense that a single theme runs throughout his writing, however, the theory lacks a structured taxonomy, which is a set of operationally defined terms and a clear limitation of scope. Therefore, it rates low on internal consistency. Next is parsimony is low. Fromm was reluctant to abandon earlier concepts or to relate them precisely to his later ideas. His theory lacks simplicity and unity. For these reasons, they rate Fromm's theory low on the criterion of parsimony. So overall, while Fromm's theories offer profound and thought-provoking insights into the interplay between individual psychology and societal influences, they are sometimes viewed as lacking the empirical rigor found in other psychological theories. Now let's proceed to the concept of humanity, the last topic. So I have listed here concept of humanity according to Fromm, and the first one here is pessimistic versus optimistic. This is middle ground because pessimistic because we know that the world is bad, and optimistic because even though the world is bad, we can still make our decision. So here Fromm was both pessimistic and optimistic. On one hand, he believed that most people did not accomplish a reunion with nature or other people, and that few people achieve positive freedom. He also had a rather negative attitude toward modern capitalism, which he insisted was responsible for most people's feeling isolated and alone while clinging desperately to the illusion of independence and freedom. Next is free choice versus determinism. This is also middle ground because on one hand we want to go back on nature, and on the other we have the choice. So we have the freedom, self-awareness, and reasoning to defy that. So on the dimension of free choice versus determinism, Fromm took a middle position, insisting that this issue cannot be applied to the entire species. Next is causality versus teleology. On the dimension of causality versus teleology, Fromm tended to slightly favor teleology because he believed that people constantly strive for a frame of orientation, a roadmap by which to plan their lives into the future. Next is conscious versus unconscious motivation. Fromm took a middle stance regarding conscious versus unconscious motivation, placing slightly more emphasis on conscious motivation and contending that one of the uniquely human traits is self-awareness. Humans are the only animals that can reason, visualize the future, and consciously strive towards self-erected goals. Fromm insisted, however, that self-awareness is a mixed blessing and that many people repress their basic character to avoid mounting anxiety. And the last one here is social influences versus biological. Slightly on social influences, but it's biological because of nature, and then it's in our DNA to want to go back to nature. So on the issue of social influences versus biological ones, Fromm placed somewhat more importance on the impact of history, culture, and society than on biology. Although he insisted that human personalities are historically and culturally determined, He did not overlook biological factors, defining humans as the freaks of the universe. So, for Fromm's humanity's goal here is to achieve self-awareness, love, and personal growth while resisting the alienating forces of modern society. His vision is deeply ethical, emphasizing the importance of love, freedom, and social responsibility in creating a more humane world. And that ends my presentation. If you guys have questions or any clarifications, please don't hesitate to ask. And our group is now signing off. Thank you so much for listening and have a good day. Bye.